I wasn't supposed to be here. Benefit galas weren't my scene. Never had been. Champagne flutes and forced conversations, designer dresses and networking smiles. All of it felt like theater I'd never learned to perform. But Principal Morrison had cornered me last week with that particular look on her face, the one that said this wasn't optional. "Emma, we need someone from the art department. Our biggest donors are attending. Just show your face. Talk about the program. Make them feel good about writing checks." So here I stood in the grand ballroom of some Manhattan hotel, whose marble floors probably cost more than I'd earn in a decade. My black dress was 6 years old, bought for a college interview I'd bombed spectacularly. The flats on my feet were sensible because heels felt like voluntary torture. Around me, women glittered in jewelry that could pay off student loans. Men wore watches worth small cars. And I tried not to look as uncomfortable as I felt. My fingers found the necklace at my throat. They always did when I was nervous. Simple silver chain, small anchor pendant worn smooth from 15 years of anxious touching. I'd had it so long I barely remembered not wearing it. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for it in the shower, forgetting I'd taken it off. "Ms. Reeves?" I turned to find Principal Morrison approaching with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Everything about him screamed money and power, from his Italian leather shoes to the platinum watch on his wrist. "This is Richard Castellano, board member of the Fontanelli Foundation. They're considering a major grant for our program." I shook his hand and slipped into teacher mode. The version of myself that could talk passionately about art therapy and creative expression, even while my mind counted the minutes until I could leave. He asked questions about our curriculum, our student demographics, our success stories. I answered honestly because I believed in what we did, even if I hated doing it surrounded by this much wealth. "You're quite dedicated," he said after several minutes. "The foundation appreciates educators who genuinely care. I just want kids to have outlets I didn't have at their age." Difficult childhood? The question was too personal for a fundraiser, but his tone was kind enough that I answered. "Complicated, but art helped. Still does. Well, let me introduce you to our director. He makes the final decisions on grants." Castellano gestured across the ballroom. "He's young, but don't let that fool you. Alessandro takes the foundation's work very seriously." We moved through the crowd, and I tried not to catalog how out of place I felt. Every woman here looked polished, confident, like they'd been born knowing which fork to use at formal dinners. I'd grown up in foster care until the Reeves adopted me at 4, then we'd fled to Boston when I was 10 for reasons my parents never fully explained. Fancy galas hadn't been part of that education. Then I saw him. He stood near the bar, surrounded by men in dark suits who moved like trained guard dogs. But he wasn't like them. He was maybe my age, 25 at most. Black hair styled perfectly, sharp jawline, shoulders that filled out his tuxedo in a way that suggested serious time in a gym or something more violent. Ice blue eyes stared at his phone, scrolling with one hand while the other held a glass of whiskey. Something about him made my chest tighten. Not attraction, though he was objectively attractive. Something deeper, more unsettling, like my subconscious recognized something my conscious mind couldn't place. Castellano was still talking. "Alessandro oversees our educational initiatives personally. He believes strongly in giving back to communities that need it most." Alessandro. The name felt heavy in my mind, significant in a way I didn't understand. Then he looked up. His eyes found mine across the crowded ballroom and the world tilted. I couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. Those eyes, that exact shade of blue. I'd seen them before. I knew I had. But where? When? His gaze dropped from my face to my throat, to the necklace. Every muscle in his body went rigid. The phone in his hand went dark. The whiskey glass trembled slightly in his grip. For 3 seconds that felt like hours. He just stared at the anchor pendant resting against my collarbone. Then he moved. Not walked. Moved. Like a predator who'd spotted something that belonged to him, cutting through the crowd without seeming to notice the people who stepped hastily out of his way. The men in suits followed, but stopped when he raised one hand in a sharp gesture. I should have run. Every instinct I'd developed from years of surviving foster care screamed at me to turn and leave immediately, but my feet wouldn't cooperate. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Taller than I'd realized, at least 6'3", the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. Leather and gunpowder and violence barely contained. "Where did you get that necklace?" His voice was low, controlled. But underneath, I heard something sharp and desperate. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. Those eyes kept boring into mine, demanding answers I couldn't give. "I asked you a question." His hand moved, fingers closing around my wrist. Not painfully, but firm enough that I couldn't easily pull away. "Where did you get it?" "I bought it." The lie came automatically, practiced from 15 years of keeping secrets. "At a thrift store, years ago." "You're lying." "I'm not." Your pulse is racing. His thumb pressed slightly against the inside of my wrist, finding the frantic beating of my heart through thin skin. "You're terrified. Why?" "Because you're grabbing me at a fundraiser." We stared at each other. The noise of the gala faded into background static. There was only him. Only those ice-blue eyes that I knew from somewhere. Only the pressure of his fingers on my wrist and the terrible certainty that this man could destroy me if he wanted to. "Mr. Fontanelli?" Castellano's voice broke whatever spell had locked us together. Alessandro's fingers loosened but didn't immediately release me. When they finally did, my wrist burned where he'd touched me, like his fingerprints had been branded into my skin. "Richard." Alessandro's voice was perfectly controlled now, betraying nothing. "You were introducing me to someone?" "Ms. Emma Reeves. She teaches art at PS 118 in Brooklyn." Brooklyn. The word hit me like a physical blow. Alessandro's eyes sharpened. "Brooklyn," he repeated softly. "How interesting. Why was that interesting?" Why did the name of a borough make his expression shift from controlled fury to something calculating? "I'll be in touch," Alessandro said, still looking at me. "About the grant." Then he turned and walked away, the men in suits falling into formation around him. I stood there shaking, my wrist still burning, my heart still hammering. Castellano was saying something about funding timelines and application processes. I nodded without hearing. My eyes tracked Alessandro across the ballroom. He stopped near the exit, pulled out his phone, made a call. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in his shoulders. Then he looked back at me one final time. The promise in that look made my blood run cold. This wasn't over. Whatever I'd accidentally triggered by wearing this necklace, by being here, by existing, it was just beginning. I left the gala 20 minutes later, making excuses to Morrison about not feeling well. Walked 8 blocks before I could breathe normally again. Called a car because the subway felt too exposed, too public. In the back seat, my hand went to the necklace. I should take it off. Should go home and bury it in a drawer, never wear it again. But I couldn't. It was the only thing I had from that night 15 years ago. The only proof that the girl with blue eyes had been real. Had pressed this into my 10-year-old hand and whispered desperately for me to hide it, to never tell. And now her brother had found me. I didn't need to search his name to know that's who he was. The eyes were identical. The same impossible shade of blue I'd seen dimming in a warehouse in Red Hook when I was 10 years old, when I'd watched a girl my age die in a pool of blood and promised her I'd keep her secret. Alessandro Fontanelli. I'd kept that promise for 15 years, but something told me those years of silence had just come to an end. 3 days passed without further contact. 3 days where I jumped every time my phone rang, where I checked over my shoulder constantly, where sleep came in fragmented pieces filled with blue eyes and blood. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that Alessandro Fontanelli had been surprised by the necklace but wouldn't actually do anything about it, that I was safe. I was wrong. It started with the feeling of being watched. On my way to school the second morning, I noticed a black sedan parked across from my building. Tinted windows, engine running, no one getting in or out. By the time I left for work, it was gone. I told myself I was being paranoid. That afternoon, the same car appeared half a block from the school. Different location, same vehicle, same sense of eyes tracking my movements. The third day, there were 2 of them, black sedans at both ends of my street when I left for work. Men in suits standing near the subway entrance, not looking at me directly but positioned in a way that felt intentional. One of them had an earpiece visible beneath his collar. I wasn't paranoid. I was being surveilled. By the third night, I'd stopped sleeping properly. Every sound in my building made me freeze. Every footstep in the hallway outside my door sent adrenaline spiking through my system. I'd lived in this studio apartment for 6 months. Ever since coming back to New York after my parents died in Boston. It had felt safe before. Now it felt like a trap. I got home from school around 6, arms full of student artwork that needed grading. Unlocked my door, stepped inside, reached for the light switch. Someone was already sitting in my apartment. The scream died in my throat when I saw who it was. Alessandro Fontanelli sat in my desk chair, perfectly still in the darkness, hands folded in his lap. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. His ice blue eyes tracked my movement as I stood frozen in the doorway. "Close the door," he said quietly. My hand found the doorknob behind me. Every instinct screamed to run, to get out, to go anywhere but here. But where would I run? He'd found my apartment, had somehow gotten inside, had been waiting for me. Running wouldn't help. I closed the door. The click of the lock felt final. How did you get in? That's not the question you should be asking. Then what is? You should be asking how long I've known where you live, how much I know about you, and why you're still breathing when you've been lying to me. He stood in one fluid movement, towering over me even from across the small space. Emma Catherine Reeves, 25 years old. Born in Brooklyn, adopted by Michael and Jennifer Reeves at age 4. Lived in Brooklyn Heights until August 15th, 2010. Then your family relocated to Boston. Quickly. No job transfer, no family emergency. Just packed up and left within 2 weeks. My blood turned cold. You investigated me. Of course I investigated you. You're wearing my dead sister's necklace and lying about where you got it. He took a step closer. But here's what I can't figure out. Why did your family run to Boston on August 15th, 2010? That's 2 weeks after my sister was murdered in a warehouse in Red Hook. That's 2 weeks after a 10-year-old girl was executed, and the only witnesses were the killers. I don't know what you're talking about. More lies. Another step. Your heart is racing again. You're terrified. Because you do know. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocked it, held it up so I could see the screen. A photograph filled the display. 2 children, maybe 9 years old, laughing at something off camera. A boy and girl with identical black hair and blue eyes. The girl wore the necklace I was wearing now. This was my sister, Bianca. We were twins. This was taken a month before someone shot her 3 times in an abandoned warehouse and left her to die. His voice was steady, but underneath I heard something breaking. She was wearing this necklace when she died. It was a gift from me. I made it myself, saved for months to buy the pendant, had it attached to sterling silver. There's no other one like it in the world. I couldn't look away from the photograph. The girl's face, frozen in happiness, laughing at something she couldn't have known would be her last summer. Those blue eyes so full of life. So, I'll ask you one more time, Emma. Where did you get that necklace? My legs gave out. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around my knees. 15 years. I'd kept this secret for 15 years. Never told anyone, not even therapists my parents sent me to after we moved. Never spoke about that night, about what I'd seen, about the promise I'd made. But now her brother was standing in my apartment with evidence I couldn't deny, and the walls I'd built around that memory were crumbling. I was there, I whispered. Alessandro went completely still. What? I was there that night. In the warehouse. I saw everything. The words kept coming now. 15 years of silence breaking like a dam. I was hiding. I didn't mean to be there. I ran away from home and I was just trying to find somewhere safe to sleep, and I ended up in that warehouse and then they came. He moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Crouched down in front of me so we were at eye level. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about my adoptive father drinking, about the fight that night, about running away at 10 years old with nowhere to go, about finding the abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, about hiding under a tarp-covered table in the upstairs office. about waking up to the sound of cars pulling up outside. I heard footsteps on the metal stairs. I stayed hidden, but I could see through a gap in the tarp, could see into the main warehouse space through the office window. My voice shook, but I kept going. There was a man. Older, silver hair. He was carrying a little girl. She was crying, asking for her dad. He kept telling her it was okay, that they'd be with her dad soon, that she was safe. Alessandro's breathing changed. Franco Sassolini, my father's advisor. I don't know his name, but he seemed kind. He set her down behind some crates, told her to stay quiet. Then the others came. 3 men. 2 of them were speaking another language, Italian maybe. The third one had an accent, different from the others. Hispanic, and he had a tattoo. I closed my eyes, pulling up details I'd tried to forget. A snake. Green and black, going from his collar up his jaw. Very detailed. What happened then? They argued. The older man, Franco, he stood between the girl and the 3 men, started yelling at them. It got louder, more aggressive. Then I heard phones ringing. One of the men answered, spoke quickly in Italian. He said a name. Luminari. I remember because it sounded pretty, like something from a fairy tale. Alessandro's entire body went rigid. You heard Luminari? You're certain? Yes. He said it twice on the phone. Then everything happened so fast. Tears ran down my face, but I didn't stop. The man with the snake tattoo pulled a gun. Franco tried to shield the girl, but they shot him. 3 times. He fell. She screamed and tried to run. They shot her too. Where were you? Still under the table. I was paralyzed. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just watched. They made more phone calls, talked about cleaning up later. Then they left, got in their cars and drove away. And it was so quiet except for this wet, rasping sound. My voice broke completely. I knew I should help. I knew I should do something. But I was just a kid and I was terrified. It took me so long to move. By the time I crawled out and went down to where she was, I thought she was already dead. But then her eyes opened. Alessandro reached out, gripped my shoulder. She was alive? When you got to her? Barely. There was so much blood. She looked at me and for a second she was scared. Like I might hurt her too. Then she understood I was just another kid. She reached up and took off the necklace with shaking hands, pressed it into my palm and closed my fingers around it. She could barely talk, but she whispered something. She said, "Hide it. Don't tell. Promise." And you promised. I promised. I didn't know what else to do. Then her eyes just stopped seeing me. She was gone. I looked up at Alessandro, at the tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save her. I'm sorry I kept the secret, but I promised her. And I was so scared they'd come back and kill me too if anyone knew I'd been there. He pulled me into his arms without warning, held me while I sobbed against his chest. 15 years of trauma pouring out. When I finally calmed enough to breathe, he pulled back slightly. You were 10 years old, he said roughly. You witnessed a murder and survived. You kept a dying girl's promise for 15 years. You have nothing to apologize for. But if I'd told someone, you'd probably be dead. Whoever killed Bianca would have hunted you down and eliminated the witness. He stood, offered me his hand. Your parents knew, didn't they? That's why they ran to Boston. I let him pull me to my feet. I told them the next day. I didn't want to lie. They saw the news, recognized the location from my description. They were terrified. My dad said if anyone knew I'd witnessed a mafia execution, I'd be killed. We left Brooklyn 2 weeks later. They made me promise never to tell anyone what I'd seen. Until now. Until now. I looked at him, at this dangerous man who'd broken into my apartment and somehow made me feel safer than I had in years. What happens now? His expression hardened. Now I find out who Luminari is, and I make them pay for what they did to my sister. Alessandro didn't leave my apartment that night. Instead, he made a phone call in Italian, speaking rapidly to someone named Luca, while I sat on my bed trying to process that I'd just confessed to witnessing a murder 15 years ago. When he finished, he turned back to me with an expression I couldn't read. I need you to tell me everything again. Every detail you can remember, no matter how small. So I did. We sat on opposite ends of my bed, and I walked him through that night in excruciating detail. The sound of cars arriving, the way Franco had carried Bianca so carefully, the exact words he'd spoken about her father being somewhere safe, the argument between Franco and the three men. Wait, Alessandro interrupted. You said Franco mentioned my father, that they'd be with him soon. What were his exact words? I closed my eyes, reaching back. He said your dad is waiting. We'll be there soon. You're safe now. Something like that. He kept reassuring her. Alessandro pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. My father was alive that night. He wasn't killed until 3 weeks later. The official story was that the Russians killed him in retaliation for the conflict they supposedly started by murdering Bianca. But if Franco was taking Bianca to meet our father somewhere safe, then your father knew something was wrong. He was trying to protect her, which means he knew there was an internal threat. Someone close enough to the family that he couldn't trust normal channels. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Tell me more about the three men, the two who spoke Italian first. I tried to visualize them. One was taller, muscular build, dark hair. He was the one who made the phone call, who said luminari. The other was shorter, stockier. They both wore dark clothes. Nothing distinctive I can remember. And the third? The one with the tattoo? That one was easier. Tall, but not as tall as you. Maybe 6 feet, shaved head, very muscular. The tattoo was incredibly detailed. A snake with its mouth open, fangs showing. It started at his collar and went all the way up the left side of his neck to his jaw. Green and black ink. He wore a leather jacket even though it was summer, and when he spoke he had a strong accent. Spanish, I think, but I was 10. I couldn't tell you exactly what kind. Alessandro was typing on his phone again. The snake tattoo, that's distinctive. If he's cartel, someone will know him. And if he's cartel. His expression darkened. The family was told the Sontsevskaya Bratva killed Bianca. Russian mafia. We've been at war with them for 15 years because of it. But if the actual killer was Mexican cartel, then someone lied about who did it. Someone orchestrated the whole thing, used Bianca's death to start a war that benefited them. He stood, paced my tiny apartment. Roberto Luminari. You heard that name on the phone. Roberto Luminari has been my underboss for the past 4 years. Before that, he served as regent of the family, managing everything after my father died until I was old enough to take control. The implications were staggering. You think he killed your sister? I think he hired someone to kill my sister, killed Franco, and then killed my father to cover it up. Then he spent 15 years positioning himself as my most trusted advisor, while I hunted the wrong enemy. Alessandro's voice was ice. And now you're the only person who can prove it. Fear spiked through me. What does that mean? It means you're in danger. If Roberto finds out you exist, that you witnessed the murder, he'll eliminate you. He's kept this secret buried for 15 years. He won't let one witness destroy everything he's built. But no one knows I was there. I've never told anyone except my parents, and they're dead. I found you in 3 days, Emma. If I could track you down using basic information, Roberto can too. Especially now that he knows I'm interested in you. Alessandro stopped pacing, looked at me directly. Those men following you? That was me. But now Roberto knows I'm investigating something. He'll want to know why. And when he digs into your background, he'll find the same things I did. 10-year-old girl, family fled Brooklyn 2 weeks after the murder. Same time frame, same neighborhood. My hands started shaking. So what do I do? You come with me. Now. Tonight. I'll put you somewhere safe while I investigate Roberto, while I find proof of what he did. I can't just leave. I have a job, responsibilities. You'll be dead within 48 hours if you stay here. The bluntness made me flinch. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was stating a fact, something he understood from years living in a world I'd only glimpsed from the shadows. I'll handle your job. He continued. Family emergency, need immediate leave, perfectly understandable. Your principal won't question it. But Emma, I'm not giving you a choice here. You're coming with me whether you agree or not, because you're the key to everything. The only living witness to my sister's murder. The only person who can identify the killers and confirm Roberto's involvement. I should have argued. Should have fought for my independence, my right to make my own decisions. But looking at Alessandro's face, at the determination and barely controlled fury, I understood something fundamental. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about a 10-year-old girl who'd bled out on a warehouse floor while her brother searched for answers. This was about justice 15 years delayed. Okay, I said quietly. I'll go with you. Relief flickered across his face, quickly masked. Pack a bag. Enough for a week. Clothes, toiletries. Anything you can't live without. While I moved around my small apartment gathering things, Alessandro made more phone calls. I heard him giving orders in clipped tones, arranging security, setting up protocols. When I emerged from the bathroom with my toothbrush and medications, he was standing by the window looking down at the street. There's a car parked at the end of the block that wasn't there when I arrived, he said without turning around. Black sedan. Engine running. Could be nothing. Could be Roberto's people already moving. My blood ran cold. Already? He's not stupid. He's survived this long by being paranoid and proactive. Alessandro finally turned to face me. Ready? I looked around my apartment. 6 months of trying to build a life in the city where I was born. Trying to find some connection to the place my parents had fled from so urgently. Now I was leaving again. Running again. Because of the same night that had forced us out the first time. Ready? I lied. We took the back stairs. Alessandro moved with practiced ease through my building, clearly having scouted it before breaking in earlier. At the ground floor, a different door than the main entrance, he held up a hand to stop me, pulled out his phone, checked something, then pushed the door open. A black SUV waited in the alley, windows tinted, engine running. The driver was a massive man with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He nodded to Alessandro. Vincent, any problems? 2 men watching the front entrance. They haven't moved in 20 minutes. Want me to handle them? No. We leave quietly. If they follow, lose them. If they try to intercept, eliminate the threat. Alessandro opened the back door, gestured for me to get in. Emma, this is Vincent. He's been with me for 8 years. You're safe with him. I climbed into the SUV, Alessandro following. The interior smelled like leather and gun oil. As Vincent pulled out of the alley, I caught a glimpse of 2 men in suits standing near the front of my building, exactly where Alessandro had said. One of them spoke into a radio as we passed. They've made us, Vincent said calmly. Lose them. What followed was the most terrifying 10 minutes of my life. Vincent drove like he'd trained for this, weaving through Brooklyn streets with precision that suggested military or law enforcement background. Twice I saw cars behind us attempting to follow. Twice Vincent outmaneuvered them with turns that shouldn't have been possible. Finally, we merged onto the highway heading toward Manhattan. No one followed. We're clear, Vincent confirmed. Alessandro's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezed once. You did well. Most people panic. I'm panicking now, I admitted. I know, but you're doing it quietly, which is what matters. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, a gesture that should have been comforting, but felt charged with something else. Emma, I need you to understand what you're walking into. My world isn't safe. It's not clean or simple. The people I deal with, the things I have to do to maintain control, they're not pretty. You're warning me about violence? I watched your sister die when I was 10 years old. This is different. This is choosing to be part of it instead of accidentally witnessing it. I'm not choosing to be part of your world, I said. I'm choosing not to die. There's a difference. He almost smiled. Fair enough. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Manhattan rose before us, towers of glass and steel glittering in the night. Vincent navigated to a building in Midtown that screamed wealth, pulling into an underground garage secured by gates and armed guards. Welcome to my home, Alessandro said as we got out. For the foreseeable future, it's yours too. The private elevator took us directly to his penthouse. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that belonged in architectural magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that was more art than function. Lighting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It was beautiful and intimidating, and completely alien to someone who'd spent most of her life in modest apartments and foster care bedrooms. The guest room is this way. Alessandro guided me down a hallway. Private bathroom, everything you should need. If something's missing, tell me and I'll have it delivered. The guest room was bigger than my entire studio apartment. King bed with sheets that looked expensive, a desk, a closet that could fit 3 times the wardrobe I owned. Through another door, a bathroom with marble floors and a shower big enough for 4 people. Get some rest, Alessandro said from the doorway. We'll talk more in the morning about what happens next. Alessandro? He turned back. Thank you. For protecting me. Even though I'm just a stranger who happens to have information you need. His expression softened slightly. You're not just information, Emma. You were there with my sister in her last moments. You kept her promise for 15 years. That means something. To me, that means everything. Then he closed the door, and I was alone in a room that cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, processing the reality that my life had just completely disintegrated because of a necklace I'd worn every day without thinking. I should have been terrified. I was terrified, but underneath the fear was something else, something that felt almost like relief. For 15 years I'd carried this secret, this weight. Now someone finally knew. Someone who understood what it meant, who could finally give Bianca the justice she'd deserved. Whatever came next, at least I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, disoriented for a moment about where I was. Then memory crashed back. Alessandro. The penthouse. Running from men who wanted me dead because I'd witnessed a murder 15 years ago. I checked my phone. 7:30 in the morning. 14 missed calls from Principal Morrison, and 3 texts asking where I was. My stomach twisted with guilt. But what could I say? Sorry, can't come in, hiding from the Mafia. When I finally worked up the nerve to leave the guest room, I found Alessandro in the kitchen area. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark jeans and a gray Henley that emphasized his build. Coffee mug in hand, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian to someone. When he saw me, he ended the call. Morning. There's coffee and I had breakfast delivered. Help yourself. The kitchen island was loaded with pastries, fruit, bagels, cream cheese, enough food for 6 people. My stomach rumbled despite the anxiety. I need to call my principal, I said, pouring coffee. She's worried. Already handled. Luca called this morning, told her you had a family emergency and needed immediate leave. She approved 2 weeks. Luca, my second in command. He's been with me since I took control of the family 4 years ago. Alessandro watched me doctor my coffee with cream and sugar. How'd you sleep? Barely. You? Same. I've been working on identifying your snake tattoo friend since 4 this morning. He pulled out a tablet, swiped to an image. Is this him? I looked at the photo. A man with a shaved head and neck tattoo, exactly as I remembered. The snake's fangs visible even in the grainy surveillance shot. My breath caught. That's him. That's the man who shot Bianca and Franco. Alessandro's expression went cold and satisfied simultaneously. His name is Javier Castillo, freelance sicario who works primarily for the Cartel de Sinaloa, based in Tijuana but travels for high-value contracts. He's wanted in 3 countries for murder, trafficking, and weapons charges. How did you find him so fast? I have contacts who specialize in this kind of information. Description of a distinctive tattoo combined with cartel connections. Timeline from 2010, it was enough. He swiped to another image, this one a dossier with details in Spanish and English. According to my sources, Castillo did several jobs in New York between 2009 and 2011, then nothing in this region for over a decade. Because Roberto didn't need him anymore, I said quietly. Once Bianca and your father were dead, the job was done. Exactly. Alessandro set the tablet down. But this gives us proof. A cartel sicario killed my sister, not Russian mafia. Which means someone hired him and lied about who was responsible. Which means Roberto orchestrated everything. I forced myself to eat a bagel, needing something in my stomach. What was Franco doing that night? Why was he taking Bianca somewhere? That's what I've been trying to piece together. Franco Sassolini was my father's most trusted advisor. They'd known each other for 30 years. If my father sent Bianca away with Franco, it was because he'd identified a serious internal threat. Alessandro pulled up another document on the tablet. I had Luca pull council records from July and August 2010. There was a meeting scheduled for August 3rd, 2 days after Bianca died. The agenda item was listed as disciplinary review for unauthorized external contracts. Someone was doing business they weren't supposed to. My father was planning to bring formal charges against someone in the family, someone high-ranking enough that it required council approval for punishment. He met my eyes. Roberto was underboss even then, my father's second in command. If my father discovered Roberto had been conducting unauthorized business with cartels, dealing behind his back, skimming profits, your father would have stripped him of power and probably had him killed, at minimum. More likely, he would have been executed as an example. Alessandro's voice was matter of fact, like we were discussing firing an employee instead of murder. So Roberto moved first. Had Castillo kill Franco and Bianca to prevent them from reaching safety, then killed my father 3 weeks later before the investigation could advance. The pieces fit together with horrible clarity. Your father must have known something was wrong. That's why he sent Bianca away with Franco. He was trying to protect her until he could deal with Roberto. But someone tipped Roberto off. Someone told him Franco was moving Bianca that night. Alessandro's jaw tightened, which means Roberto had spies even back then. People loyal to him over my father. I thought about what I'd heard that night, replaying the conversation in my mind. When Franco was arguing with the men, he said something. He switched to English for one sentence. He said, "He knows everything. He's already gone to the council." Alessandro went very still. "You're certain those were his words?" "I'm certain." It stood out because everything else was in Italian. But that one sentence, he said it in English. Maybe so Bianca would understand, or maybe just because he was stressed. I closed my eyes, pulling up the exact memory. He said it right before they shot him, like he was trying to tell them it was too late, that killing them wouldn't stop what was already in motion, which means my father had already presented evidence to the family council, had already started formal proceedings against Roberto. Alessandro stood abruptly, started pacing. That's why Roberto had to kill my father so quickly. The council knew there was an investigation. If my father had lived another week, Roberto would have been exposed and eliminated. But your father died, and you were just a child, too young to follow up on the investigation. And Roberto became regent, controlling everything while I grew up. He had 11 years to bury evidence, to consolidate power, to ensure his version of events became accepted truth. By the time I was old enough to take control at 21, the Russian war had been raging for over a decade. There was no reason to question it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my blood turned to ice. The message was simple. One line. "We know you're with him. Come out, and we'll make it quick." I showed Alessandro. His expression went from anger to cold fury in a heartbeat. When did this come through? Just now. I don't recognize the number. He took my phone, did something with it, then handed it back. "They tracked you through your phone." I should have thought of that last night. "We'll get you a clean device today." "Alessandro, they know I'm here. They know I'm with you. They know you're somewhere with me. This building is a fortress. They can't get to you here." But his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "I need to move faster. Roberto's escalating, which means he's panicking." As if summoned by the conversation, Alessandro's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something flickered across his face. "It's Roberto. Are you going to answer?" "I have to. If I avoid him now, it confirms I'm onto him." Alessandro composed his expression into neutrality before answering. "Roberto, good morning." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Alessandro's face carefully. His expression remained controlled, but his free hand curled into a fist against the counter. "No, I haven't been avoiding you. I've been dealing with some personal matters. Nothing that concerns family business." Pause. "I don't think that's necessary. Whatever you need to discuss can wait until our scheduled meeting Thursday." Another pause. Longer this time. "No, Roberto. I'm not meeting you today. I said Thursday." He ended the call, set the phone down deliberately. "He wants to meet immediately. Says there are urgent matters requiring my attention. He's never pushed this hard before. Because he knows something's wrong. He knows you're investigating. Or he knows about you. Alessandro's eyes met mine. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. When you were in that warehouse, did anyone see you? Even for a second? Any chance one of those men knew there was a witness? I thought back, replaying every moment. I don't think so. I was completely hidden under the tarp. They never came upstairs to the office area. After they left, it was several minutes before I moved. By then they were gone. But there's a chance, a small one, that they saw movement, heard something, noticed something was off. I suppose there's always a chance. But I was terrified. I barely breathed. 15 years, Emma. Roberto's kept this secret for 15 years. If he even suspects there was a witness, someone who could destroy everything he's built, he'll eliminate that threat without hesitation. Alessandro moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the bright kitchen. Which means you can't leave this penthouse. Not for any reason. Not until I've dealt with Roberto and neutralized the threat. How long will that take? Days. Maybe a week. I need to gather enough evidence to prove to the family council that Roberto betrayed us. I need documentation, witnesses, something beyond just your testimony. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was gentle but possessive. I know this feels like a cage, but it's a cage that keeps you breathing. And if Roberto comes here, if he forces a meeting, then he'll have to go through 12 armed men and me. And I promise you, Emma, he won't get to you. I failed to protect Bianca. I won't fail to protect you. The intensity in his voice made something in my chest tighten. This wasn't just about finding his sister's killer anymore. Somewhere in the past 24 hours, I'd become something more than a witness to him, something personal. Outside the windows, the city sprawled beneath us. Millions of people living ordinary lives, going to jobs, drinking coffee, completely unaware that 20 floors above them, a woman was hiding from killers because she'd made a promise to a dying child 15 years ago. I need to do something, I said. I can't just sit here waiting. If I'm stuck in this penthouse, give me something to do, something useful. Alessandro considered this, then nodded. Write down everything you remember from that night. Every detail, no matter how small. Descriptions of the 2 Italian men. Any other words you heard. The exact timeline. Anything that might help us identify everyone involved. You think there were others besides Roberto? Roberto didn't act alone. Someone helped him, covered for him, possibly carried out the actual murders under his orders. If we can identify everyone involved, we can dismantle his entire network. He handed me the tablet. Start writing. I'll have Luca bring you a clean laptop and phone later. As he turned to leave, my hand caught his wrist. Alessandro, thank you. For believing me. For protecting me. I know I'm just some random teacher who happened to witness something, but you're not random, he interrupted. You were there when my sister died. You gave her comfort in her last moments. You kept her promise for 15 years. That makes you family in a way Roberto never was. His hand covered mine where it gripped his wrist, and I protect my family. Then he was gone, disappearing into his office to make calls in Italian, while I sat at his kitchen counter trying to write down memories I'd spent 15 years trying to forget. 5 days trapped in Alessandro's penthouse. 5 days of watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling like a bird in a very expensive cage. The guards rotated shifts every 8 hours. I learned their names, their patterns, the way they moved through the space like well-trained shadows. Marcus during the day, David in the evenings, Vincent at night. All of them unfailingly polite, constantly armed, never quite looking me in the eye. Alessandro disappeared for hours at a time, handling business he wouldn't discuss. Sometimes I'd hear him on phone calls in Italian, his voice sharp with command. Other times he'd work in his office with the door closed, and I'd see the glow of his computer screen through the frosted glass. He'd check on me periodically, ask if I needed anything, then vanish again into whatever violent world he inhabited. I spent my time writing down everything I remembered from that night, filling pages with details I'd tried to forget. The sound of Bianca's breathing as she died, the exact shade of Franco's silver hair, the pattern of blood on the concrete floor, every word I could remember from the phone conversations. Alessandro collected these notes like they were sacred texts, studying them for hours, cross-referencing with information I wasn't privy to. By the 6th night, I was going quietly insane. The penthouse was beautiful, but it was still a prison. I couldn't leave, couldn't see friends, couldn't even open a window because Alessandro was paranoid about sniper positions. The walls were closing in. I couldn't sleep again. Too much nervous energy, too much thinking about Roberto hunting me, too much replaying that warehouse scene on an endless loop. Around 2 a.m, I gave up and went to the living room in pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt Alessandro had given me when my clothes ran out. The city glittered beyond the windows like scattered diamonds. How many people out there were sleeping peacefully, unaware that a war was brewing in the shadows? How many of them had witnessed murders and kept the secret for 15 years? Can't sleep? I spun around. Alessandro stood in the doorway to his office, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, jaw shadowed with stubble. He'd been pushing himself as hard as he was pushing his investigation. I didn't mean to disturb you. You didn't. He moved to the bar, poured whiskey into 2 glasses, brought one to me. You look like you need this more than I do. I took it, even though alcohol at 2 a.m. felt like a terrible idea. The burn was familiar now after 5 nights of this routine. Funny how quickly bad habits formed in captivity. How long does this go on? I asked. How long before Roberto makes his move or you make yours? Soon. We're close to having everything we need. He sat on the couch, gestured for me to join him. I did, keeping distance between us, hyper-aware of how thin my borrowed pajamas were. Luca found records of wire transfers from Roberto's accounts to shell companies in Mexico. The timing matches up with when Castillo was in New York. It's not conclusive proof, but it's circumstantial evidence. Is that enough? Not yet. I need something concrete. A witness, documentation, recorded confession. Something the family council can't dismiss as coincidence. He took a long drink. The problem is Roberto's been covering his tracks for 15 years. He's good at this. What happens if you can't prove it? Do I just hide here forever? No. If I can't prove it through evidence, I'll handle it another way. His expression went cold, but that's messier. It raises questions, creates instability. I'd prefer to do this cleanly. I knew what he meant by handle it another way. Murder. Plain and simple. And the casual way he discussed it reminded me that no matter how gentle he'd been with me, Alessandro Fontanelli was still a mafia boss. Violence was his language. Tell me about her, I said instead. About Bianca. What was she like before that night? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she was everything I wasn't. Soft where I was hard. Kind where I was cold. We were twins, but we couldn't have been more different. His fingers traced the rim of his glass. She cried when she saw hurt animals, would bring home strays even though my father forbade it. She'd sneak them into her room, hide them until our mother inevitably found out. Your father was strict? He ran a criminal organization. Strict doesn't begin to cover it, but with Bianca he was different, softer. She was the only person who could make him laugh genuinely. Alessandro set his glass down, stood, crossed to a bookshelf, pulled down a silver-framed photograph, brought it back to me. The image showed 2 children around 9 years old, a boy and girl with identical black hair and blue eyes, arms around each other, laughing at something off camera. The girl wore the necklace I'd had on at the gala. Joy radiated from both their faces. That was taken at our birthday party, a month before she died. She'd just beaten me at chess for the first time. Wouldn't stop gloating about it for weeks. His voice roughened. I was supposed to protect her. We had this thing, this twin connection everyone talks about. I could always tell when she was upset or scared. But that night, I didn't feel anything. Didn't know she was in danger until it was too late. You were 10 years old. You couldn't have known. I should have. I should have felt something was wrong. He took the photo back, stared at it. After she died, that connection just went silent. Like part of me died with her. I spent years trying to feel it again, trying to find some sense of her still existing somewhere. But there was nothing. Just absence. I moved closer without thinking. Driven by impulse I didn't fully understand. She made me promise to survive. Those were practically her last words. To hide the necklace, to never tell, and to survive. I think she knew she was dying and she wanted someone to live. Even if she couldn't. Alessandro's eyes met mine. You kept that promise. For 15 years you survived. You built a life, became a teacher, helped other kids. That's what she would have wanted. Is it enough, though? I survived, but I never got her justice. I never told anyone what really happened. You're telling now. That's what matters. His hand came up, cupped my face. The touch was gentle but electric. Emma, I need you to understand something. You're not just a witness to me. You're not just a piece of evidence in my investigation. Then what am I? You're the last person who saw my sister alive. The last person who heard her voice, who felt her touch. You're a connection to her I thought I'd lost forever. His thumb traced my cheekbone. And you're someone who's been carrying this trauma alone for 15 years, because you were brave enough to keep a dying girl's promise. The air between us felt charged. I should have moved back, maintained distance, remembered that this man was dangerous no matter how gently he touched me. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned into his palm, felt the warmth of his skin against mine. Alessandro. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He pulled back, answered it with clipped efficiency. I only caught fragments. Luca's name, something about council archives. Then Alessandro's expression changed completely, shifting from controlled warmth to predatory focus. You found it? You're certain? Pause. No, don't send it digitally. Bring the physical documents here. Now. He ended the call, looked at me with something like triumph. Luca found what my father presented to the family council in July 2010. Formal accusations against Roberto with documented evidence of unauthorized cartel dealings, skimming operations, and betrayal of family interests. That's what you needed. Proof. It's what I need to show the council that my father already proved Roberto was a traitor 15 years ago. Combined with your testimony about hearing Roberto's name at the murder scene, about the cartel sicario, about Franco's words, it's enough. His hands gripped my shoulders. Emma, this is almost over. Once I present this to the council, Roberto's finished. But he won't go quietly. He'll fight back. Let him. I'm ready. Alessandro's expression went cold in a way that reminded me exactly who and what he was. He killed my sister. He killed Franco. He killed my father. He's terrorized you and tried to have you murdered. I'm going to end him. And I'm going to do it in a way that destroys everything he's built. Before I could respond, before I could process the violence in his voice, his office intercom buzzed. A voice I recognized as Vincent's came through. Tense and urgent. Boss, we've got a situation. Roberto just arrived in the lobby with 6 men. He's demanding to see you. Says it's family emergency, can't wait. Alessandro's jaw tightened. How did he get past building security? He's got authorization codes. Old ones from when he used to visit regularly. Security let him through before we could intervene. Lock down the floor. No one comes up without my explicit order. I don't care if he's got codes. I don't care if he claims emergency. He doesn't get access to this penthouse. Understood. But boss, he's making threats. Says if you don't meet with him, he'll take it as declaration of war. Alessandro looked at me, something dangerous and protective flashing in his eyes. Go to your room. Lock the door. If you hear gunfire, get in the bathroom and stay low. Understand? You're going to meet with him? Here? Now? I don't have a choice. If I refuse, it confirms everything he suspects. I have to face him. Have to maintain the pretense that nothing's wrong until Luca arrives with those documents. His hands framed my face. Emma, I swear to you he won't get near you. I'll kill him myself before I let him hurt you. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you walking into an ambush. This is my world. This is what I do. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, quick and fierce. Now go. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him this was insane. That meeting with Roberto while tensions were this high was suicide. But the look in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't just about strategy or safety. This was about facing the man who'd destroyed his family. This was personal. So I went to my room like he ordered, locked the door, stood with my ear pressed against the wood, listening to the sounds of the penthouse. Footsteps, voices too muted to make out words. The elevator chiming, and waited for the gunfire I was certain would come. I couldn't stay in the room like Alessandro ordered. Call it stupidity or survival instinct. But I needed to know what was happening. If gunfire started, if something went wrong, I wasn't going to die trapped in a bedroom without knowing why. I crept to the door, unlocked it as quietly as possible, eased it open just enough to slip through. The hallway leading from the guest wing to the main living area was dimly lit. I could hear voices now, clearer. Alessandro's controlled baritone and another voice. Older, smoother. You've been avoiding me, Alessandro. That's not like you. I've been busy, Roberto. Handling personal matters that involve hiding school teachers in your penthouse. That kind of personal. My blood turned cold. He knew. Of course he knew. I moved closer, keeping to the shadows, until I could see into the living room. Roberto Luminari stood near the windows, hands clasped behind his back like a professor delivering a lecture. He looked nothing like I'd imagined. Silver hair perfectly styled, expensive suit, wire-rimmed glasses that gave him an intellectual air. He could have been anyone's grandfather, not a man who'd murdered children. 6 men stood behind him in a loose semicircle. All of them had the look of professionals, hands near concealed weapons, eyes constantly scanning. Alessandro's guards were positioned strategically around the room. At least 8 that I could see, probably more hidden. The tension was explosive. I don't know what you're talking about, Alessandro said evenly. Don't insult my intelligence. You disappeared a woman from her apartment 6 days ago. Emma Reeves, 25, substitute teacher. The same woman you showed unusual interest in at that fundraiser. Roberto turned from the window, smile never reaching his eyes. Want to tell me why you're so fascinated with a nobody school teacher? That's my business. Everything you do is family business. You're not just Alessandro Fontanelli anymore. You're the boss. Your actions affect all of us. Roberto moved closer, unthreatening, but deliberate. So I'll ask again. Why are you hiding her? What does she have that's worth risking political stability? Nothing that concerns you. But it does concern me, because I've done research on Ms. Reeves. Very interesting background. Born in Brooklyn, adopted young, lived in Brooklyn Heights until August 2010. Then her family fled to Boston within 2 weeks. No job transfer, no explanation, just ran. August 2010. That was the same month sweet little Bianca died. Same neighborhood, too. What a remarkable coincidence. Alessandro's expression didn't change, but his hand moved slightly toward his weapon. The guards all tensed simultaneously. Careful with accusations, Roberto. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm simply observing interesting patterns. Roberto spread his hands in a gesture of reasonableness. A 10-year-old girl witnesses a traumatic event. Her family runs away to protect her. 15 years later, she shows up wearing a very distinctive necklace. And suddenly you're investigating things that were settled long ago. Makes a man wonder what she saw that night. You're reaching. Am I? Because from where I stand, it looks like you've found a witness. Someone who can contradict the accepted version of events from 15 years ago. Someone who might have information that could be dangerous to certain people. Roberto's mask of civility cracked slightly. Where is she, Alessandro? Somewhere you'll never find her. Is she listening right now? Hiding in one of your guest rooms? Roberto raised his voice. Emma, sweetheart, if you can hear me, you should know Alessandro can't protect you forever. Eventually, you'll have to leave this penthouse. And when you do, my people will be waiting. I pressed my back against the wall, fighting the urge to run. He was baiting me, trying to draw me out or scare me into making mistakes. She's not your concern, Alessandro said coldly. She's absolutely my concern. She's a threat to family stability, to our understanding of past events, to certain arrangements that have been in place for 15 years. Roberto's voice hardened. I know what she is, Alessandro. I know what she saw, and I know you're using her testimony to build a case against me. Then you know I have proof you're a traitor." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Roberto's pleasant facade shattered completely. "Traitor, I'm the one who held this family together after your father's death. I'm the one who raised you, who taught you everything you know about leadership. I earned my position through years of loyal service. You murdered my sister. You murdered Franco. You murdered my father." Alessandro's voice was ice. "You hired a cartel sicario named Javier Castillo to kill them, then blamed the Russians to start a war that kept everyone distracted while you consolidated power. You've been lying to my face for 15 years. Roberto laughed. Actually laughed. "You're basing this fantasy on the word of some teacher who claims she witnessed something 15 years ago when she was a traumatized child?" "Alessandro, I expected better. I have more than her testimony. I have financial records showing wire transfers to Mexican shell companies. I have documentation of your unauthorized dealings with the Cartel de Sinaloa. I have the formal accusations my father presented to the family council days before his death." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Roberto's eyes. "That's impossible. Luca found them in the council archives. Everything my father compiled proving you were a traitor. He was going to bring charges, strip you of rank, probably have you executed. So you moved first. Killed Bianca and Franco to prevent them from escaping. Killed my father to stop the investigation. Then spent 15 years rewriting history. Even if that were true, you can't prove it. Your witness is a traumatized woman with childhood memories. Hardly credible. And whatever documents you think you have can be explained as misunderstandings, accounting errors. The council will decide that. Not you." Alessandro pulled his phone from his pocket. "Luca, come up. Bring the documents." Roberto's expression went cold and calculating. His hand moved slightly, a signal to his men. They all shifted, hands going to weapons, preparing for violence. "I could kill you right now," Roberto said conversationally. "Tell the family you'd gone mad with paranoia. That you attacked me first, forced my hand. Half the council would believe it. You've been erratic lately, distracted. It would make sense. You'd never leave this building alive. My men outnumber yours 3-1 just on this floor. But I'd still be rid of you. That might be worth the cost." They stared at each other. Two predators weighing violence against survival. I realized with horrible clarity that I was about to witness a massacre. The air felt dense with inevitability. Then the elevator chimed. Luca stepped out, carrying a leather portfolio. He looked pale but determined. "Boss, I have everything." Roberto's eyes tracked to the portfolio with barely concealed hatred. "Let me see what Antonio supposedly compiled against me." Luca opened it, pulled out yellowed documents. Even from my hiding spot, I could see the handwritten notes, the signatures. Council records from July 28, 2010. Antonio Fontanelli presented formal charges against Roberto Luminari. Unauthorized business with foreign cartels, skimming family profits, conducting operations without council approval. 3 council members witnessed and signed. Antonio planned to bring it to vote on August 3rd, 2 days after Bianca died. Alessandro said softly, "Funny timing." Roberto's face was stone. "This proves nothing. It proves my father knew you were a traitor. It proves he was moving against you. It proves you had motive to kill him and anyone who might support his accusations." Alessandro took the documents from Luca. "Combined with Emma's testimony about hearing your name at the murder scene, about the cartel sicario, about Franco's words, it's enough. The council will vote to strip your rank and authorize execution. The council won't believe the word of some frightened teacher over 15 years of loyal service. They'll believe her when she describes Javier Castillo in perfect detail, when she tells them about the snake tattoo, about the Spanish accent, about you being named specifically by the killers. They'll believe her when they cross-reference her testimony with these documents and realize everything lines up perfectly." Roberto's pleasant mask vanished entirely, replaced by cold fury. "You self-righteous little bastard. You think you're better than me? I built this empire while you were playing with toys. I made the hard decisions your father was too weak to make. I gave you a throne to inherit. You murdered my 10-year-old sister. There's no justification for that. She was collateral damage. Franco was taking her away before I could explain myself to your father. I needed time to negotiate. to make him understand my methods. But Franco panicked, and the situation escalated. Roberto's voice turned bitter. Your father was obsolete, too soft, too bound by outdated traditions. The family needed strength. I provided it. The confession hung in the air. I covered my mouth to keep from gasping. Alessandro moved with sudden violence. His fist connected with Roberto's jaw, sending the older man staggering. Roberto's guards reached for weapons, but found themselves staring down 24 red laser sights from Alessandro's men, positioned throughout the penthouse. Lower your weapons, Alessandro commanded, or you all die where you stand. Slowly, reluctantly, Roberto's men complied. Alessandro hauled Roberto up by his collar, slammed him against the window hard enough I heard it crack. You killed my sister. You killed Franco, who was loyal to my father for 30 years. You killed my father and made me call you mentor for 15 years while you lied to my face about everything. Alessandro's voice was deadly quiet. You destroyed my family. And for what? Power? Money? Pride? Roberto spat blood. For survival. For the future of this organization. Your father would have run us into the ground with his sentimentality. He would have led with honor, something you know nothing about. Alessandro pulled his gun, pressed it against Roberto's temple. The older man's eyes widened with genuine fear for the first time. Wait. Alessandro. Wait. We can negotiate this. I have information, resources, connections that could benefit you. I don't negotiate with child killers. That witness of yours. She's still vulnerable. My people know about her. Even if you kill me, they'll finish the job. She'll never be safe. Alessandro hit him again, then again. Roberto crumpled to the floor, face bleeding, glasses shattered. Her name was Bianca, my sister, your victim. Say her name. Alessandro, please. Say it. Bianca, Roberto sobbed. Her name was Bianca, and I had her killed because she was in the wrong place. And Franco, and your father. I did it all to protect what I'd built. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Roberto's body jerked once, then went still. Blood spread across the white marble floor like dark wine, pooling around his head. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I'd just watched Alessandro execute a man in cold blood. Watched him pull the trigger without hesitation, without remorse. The man who'd been gentle with me, who'd kissed my forehead an hour ago, had just become a killer right before my eyes. Alessandro stood over the body for a long moment. Then he turned, looked directly at my hiding spot in the shadows. Our eyes met across the distance. Emma. I ran. Back to the guest room, slamming the door, locking it even though I knew it wouldn't keep him out if he wanted in. Collapsed on the bed, hands over my ears like I could unhear that gunshot. Unsee the blood spreading across expensive marble. Footsteps approached. A soft knock. Emma. Let me in. Go away. Please. You killed him. You just shot him in the head in your living room. He deserved it. That's not justice. That's execution. In my world, they're the same thing. His voice was steady through the door, no hint of regret. He murdered 3 people. He destroyed my family. He tried to have you killed. What did you expect? That I'd hand him over to the police? I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to block out the image of Roberto's body on the floor. I knew what you were. I knew you were dangerous. But seeing it, watching you pull that trigger, it's different. It makes it real. Silence. Then quietly, I know, and I'm sorry you had to see it, but Roberto needed to die, and he needed to know exactly why before the end. I couldn't argue with that, but I also couldn't reconcile the man who'd held me gently hours ago with the one who'd just committed murder, without flinching. I didn't see Alessandro for 3 days after Roberto's death. He was handling what he called cleanup, which I tried not to think about too carefully. The body was gone when I finally emerged from the guest room the next morning. The marble floor spotless, no evidence that a man had died there, like it had never happened. But I knew better. The image was burned into my memory alongside Bianca bleeding out 15 years ago. Some things you couldn't unsee. The guards were different now. More of them, rotating more frequently, all on high alert. Vincent explained when I asked that Roberto's death had created instability. His loyalists were still out there, some of them high-ranking. The family council was meeting to review evidence, to decide if Alessandro had been justified. Until they voted, we were in a holding pattern. On the fourth morning, Alessandro finally appeared. He looked exhausted, older than his 25 years. Shadows under his eyes, jaw tight with stress, shoulders carrying weight I couldn't begin to imagine. "Can we talk?" he asked from the kitchen doorway. I'd been making coffee, trying to maintain some semblance of routine while trapped in his penthouse. "I suppose we have to eventually." He poured himself a cup, leaned against the counter. "I know seeing Roberto die was traumatic. I know it confirmed every fear you have about what I am, what I'm capable of. But I need you to understand something. He wasn't going to stop. If I'd let him walk out of here, he would have escalated, would have come after you, after anyone who could expose him. I understand the logic. I'm not stupid." I cradled my mug, staring into dark liquid. "But understanding why you did it doesn't make it easier to accept. One moment you're gentle with me, making me feel safe. The next you're executing someone. How do I reconcile those two versions of you? You don't. They're both real. Both part of who I am." He moved closer, not quite touching, but close enough I could feel his warmth. "Emma, I'm not asking you to forgive what I did or accept my world as normal. I'm asking you to understand that violence is sometimes the only language power understands. Roberto murdered 3 people and would have murdered more. Justice in my world isn't courtrooms and lawyers. It's direct and immediate. And now? Now that he's dead, what happens? Now the family council reviews everything. My father's documents, your testimony, financial records linking Roberto to Castillo, his confession before he died." Alessandro set his mug down. "They'll vote on whether his execution was justified. If they rule in my favor, his assets are forfeit, and his loyalists fall into line. If they rule against me, I face consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "Best case, censure and loss of some authority. Worst case, forced resignation and exile." His expression was unreadable. "Possibly death if they decide I've become unstable." My chest tightened. "Would they really kill you?" "The family doesn't tolerate leaders who make unauthorized executions. Even if Roberto was guilty, I moved without council approval. That's a violation of protocol." He finally looked at me directly. "But I'd do it again. He deserved to die for what he did to Bianca. And what about me? Once the council votes, am I free to go?" Something flickered in his eyes. "You want to leave? I want to stop being a prisoner. I want to go back to my life, my apartment, my job. I want to pretend the last week and a half never happened." The words came out harder than intended. "You saved my life. I'm grateful, but I can't live in this world. I can't be the person who watches executions and acts like it's normal. I never asked you to. You didn't have to. Just by being here, by knowing what I know, I'm complicit. I'm part of it now, whether I want to be or not." Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. Then quietly, "You're right. You didn't choose this. Bianca made you promise to survive, and you kept that promise. But keeping it brought you into my world, made you a target. That's not fair to you. So what happens next? The council meets tomorrow. They'll hear everything, review evidence, make their determination. Regardless of outcome, Roberto's network is dismantled. Without him giving orders, his people have no direction. You'll be safe to resume your life." He paused. "If that's what you want, what else would I want? You could stay." The words hung between us, weighted with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack. "Not as a prisoner, as someone who chooses to be here. With me." I stared at him, trying to understand what he was offering. "Alessandro, I'm a substitute teacher from Brooklyn. You're a mafia boss who just executed your underboss. What kind of life could we possibly have together? An honest one. One where you know exactly who and what I am, and choose me anyway." He moved closer, cupped my face in his hands. "Emma, I know this is insane. I know I have no right to ask after everything you've witnessed. But these past days with you, they've been the first time since Bianca died that I've felt something other than anger and emptiness. You barely know me. I know you kept a promise to a dying child for 15 years. I know you're brave enough to face trauma head-on instead of running from it. I know being near you makes me feel human in a way I'd forgotten was possible. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I know I'm falling in love with you, and that terrifies me more than any war or council vote ever could. The confession made my breath catch. Part of me wanted to lean into those words, to believe we could somehow make this work. But reality was harsh and unforgiving. I can't, I whispered. I can't be with someone who solves problems with violence, who kills people without hesitation. That's not who I am. Pain flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. I understand. After the council votes, I'll have Vincent take you home. You'll have security stationed discreetly nearby for a few weeks, just to ensure no residual threats. After that, you're free to live however you want. And you? I'll go back to being Alessandro Fontanelli, boss of a criminal empire, living a life you want no part of. He let his hands drop. But I'll never forget that you were there with my sister when she died, that you gave her comfort in her last moments. That matters, Emma. Even if nothing else between us does. He turned to leave, but I caught his wrist. Alessandro, wait. I need you to know something. These feelings, whatever this is between us, it's not one-sided. When you touch me, when you look at me like I matter, I feel something I haven't felt since my parents died. Like I'm not alone anymore. Then why are you pushing me away? Because I'm terrified. Terrified of your world, of the violence, of losing myself in something I can't control. I watched my parents live in fear for 15 years because of one night. I can't do that to myself. Can't choose a life where danger is constant, and death is always one decision away. Alessandro pulled me into his arms, held me tight against his chest. I could hear his heart beating, strong and steady despite everything. I wish I could promise you safety. I wish I could be someone other than what I am. But I can't lie to you. Not after everything. My world is dangerous. It always will be. And anyone close to me lives with that reality. I know. I pulled back enough to look at him. That's why I have to leave. Not because I don't care about you. Because I care too much to watch you become more of what killed Bianca. You think I'll end up like Roberto? I think violence breeds violence. I think the more you kill, the easier it becomes. I think eventually you'll stop seeing people as human and start seeing them as obstacles or threats. I touched his face gently. And I think you deserve better than that. Better than becoming the thing you hate. He kissed me then, fierce and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me before I disappeared. I kissed him back, pouring 15 years of loneliness and fear and desperate need for connection into it. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. If circumstances were different, he said roughly. If I was anyone else, would you stay? If circumstances were different, we never would have met. Bianca would still be alive and you'd be living whatever life she'd have wanted for you. I managed a sad smile. I'm glad I met you, Alessandro. I'm glad I could finally tell someone the truth about that night. But we were never meant to be anything more than this. Two people brought together by tragedy, trying to find justice for a little girl who deserved so much better. She did deserve better. So do you. He stepped back, putting distance between us. The council meets at noon tomorrow. Luca will bring you my decision after that. Whatever they decide, you'll be free by tomorrow night. What if they rule against you? What if you're in danger? Then I'll handle it the way I handle everything. With violence and strategy and whatever it takes to survive. His expression hardened back into the cold mask I recognized from our first meeting. But you don't need to worry about that. By tomorrow night, you'll be back in your apartment. Back to your life. This will all be a strange 2 weeks you'll eventually convince yourself was some kind of fever dream. Will you be okay? After I leave? I've been alone since Bianca died. Another decade or two won't make much difference. He moved toward his office, then paused. Emma, thank you for keeping her promise, for surviving, for giving me closure I thought I'd never have. That means everything. Then he was gone, door closing behind him with quiet finality. I stood in the kitchen of his expensive penthouse, coffee going cold in my hands, wondering how I'd managed to fall for someone whose world I couldn't possibly inhabit. Tomorrow the council would vote. Tomorrow I'd be free. Tomorrow I could go back to teaching art to fourth graders and pretending the past 2 weeks hadn't happened. So why did freedom feel like the worst kind of prison? Vincent drove me back to my apartment 2 weeks after I'd left it. 2 weeks that felt like a lifetime. Alessandro hadn't said goodbye. He'd been gone when Vincent knocked on the guest room door that morning, already at the council meeting that would determine his fate. Luca had delivered the news an hour later. The council ruled in Alessandro's favor. Roberto's betrayal was confirmed through overwhelming evidence. My testimony, combined with Antonio Fontanelli's documents and Roberto's recorded confession, left no room for doubt. Alessandro's execution was deemed justified. His position was secure. And I was free to go. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. Student artwork still on the walls, art supplies scattered across the desk, coffee mug in the sink from that last morning before everything changed. Like the world had frozen while I'd been gone. "We'll have someone posted nearby for the next few weeks," Vincent said, setting my bag inside. "You won't see them, but they'll be watching. Just in case any of Roberto's people get ideas. Thank you. Boss wanted me to give you this." He handed me a phone, new and clean. "Your old one was compromised. This one's secure. His number's already programmed in if you ever need anything." After Vincent left, I stood in the center of my tiny studio and tried to feel relieved. I was home. I was safe. Roberto was dead. His network dismantled. The threat was gone. I could go back to teaching. Back to my ordinary life. So why did everything feel hollow? I returned to work the next day. Principal Morrison welcomed me back with sympathy about my supposed family emergency. My students had made welcome back cards, their messy handwriting and enthusiastic crayon drawings exactly the kind of pure joy I'd needed. For 8 hours, I pretended everything was normal. But at night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about Alessandro, wondering if he was okay, if the council's ruling had really resolved everything, if he was sleeping, or if he lay awake like me, replaying those last conversations. 3 days passed, then a week. My phone stayed silent. The number Vincent had programmed remained untouched. Alessandro had meant what he said. He'd let me go, given me the freedom I'd asked for. I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt like I'd lost something irreplaceable. On the 8th day, I made a decision. Probably a stupid one, definitely a dangerous one. But I couldn't keep living with this weight, this sense of unfinished business. I called the number Vincent had saved. It rang twice before Alessandro answered. Emma. Just my name, but the way he said it made my breath catch. Like he'd been waiting for this call, hoping for it despite everything. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to be completely honest. Always. Are you okay? Really okay? The council ruling, your position, all of it?" Silence for a moment. Then, the council restored full confidence. Roberto's remaining loyalists either fell in line or were removed. The Russians accepted our explanation about the 15-year misunderstanding. We're negotiating reparations and new territorial agreements. Everything's stable. That's not what I asked. I know. His voice roughened. I'm functional. I'm leading the family, making decisions, handling business. But am I okay? No. I haven't been okay since Bianca died. And letting you walk away didn't help. You didn't let me walk away. I chose to leave, because I couldn't give you what you needed. Safety, normalcy, a life without violence. You were right to go. What if I was wrong? The words came out before I could stop them. What if leaving was the coward's choice? What if I ran because I was scared of how much I felt instead of scared of who you are? Emma, don't do this to yourself. You made the right call. Did I? Because I've spent the last week teaching art to 9-year-olds and feeling like I'm sleepwalking through someone else's life. Everything that mattered, everything that felt real, happened in those 2 weeks with you. And I threw it away because I was terrified. You were terrified for good reason. My world almost got you killed. Your world also made me feel alive for the first time since my parents died. Made me feel like I mattered. Like my survival for the past 15 years meant something. I paced my small apartment. Phone pressed to my ear. Alessandro, I need to know something. When you said you were falling in love with me, did you mean it? Or was it just the intensity of everything that happened? I meant it. I mean it. Past tense doesn't apply when the feeling hasn't changed. He paused. But that doesn't mean we should act on it. You deserve better than a life spent wondering if I'll come home, or if you'll get a call that I've been killed. You deserve peace. What if I don't want peace? What if I want something real, even if it's dangerous? Emma, I want to see you. Not at your penthouse, not with guards everywhere. Somewhere neutral. Can you do that? When? Tonight. There's a cemetery in Brooklyn, Greenwood. Meet me at the main entrance at 8. Why a cemetery? Because I need to take you somewhere. Show you something. And then we can both decide if this is really over, or if we're giving up on something that could matter. He agreed. I spent the rest of the day second-guessing myself. But by 7:30, I was in a car heading to Greenwood Cemetery. The grounds were officially closed, but Alessandro had connections that could open anything. He was waiting when I arrived, standing beside a black car, wearing jeans and a dark jacket instead of his usual suits. He looked younger, more like the 25-year-old he actually was instead of the mafia boss he'd been forced to become. "Where are we going?" he asked as I approached. "Follow me." I'd done research during the week I'd been gone. Found records, made calls, discovered information I hadn't known at 10 years old. Now I led Alessandro through winding cemetery paths until we reached a section with newer headstones. There, 2 markers side by side, Bianca Marie Fontanelli, born March 15, 2000, died August 1, 2010, beloved daughter and sister. Franco Giovanni Sassolini, born June 8, 1960, died August 1, 2010, loyal friend and protector. Alessandro stopped dead, staring at the stones like he couldn't quite believe they were real. "I didn't know they were buried together. Your mother arranged it." I found the records. She wanted Bianca laid to rest beside the man who tried to save her. I moved closer to him. I've never visited before. Never could bring myself to face it, but I needed to come here with you. Needed to tell her that her promise worked, that I survived, that I helped you find the truth. Alessandro knelt between the 2 graves, one hand on each stone. "Bianca, I'm so sorry it took me 15 years. Sorry I didn't figure it out sooner. Sorry Roberto got away with it for so long." His voice broke. "But I got him. He's gone. And Franco's been avenged too. You're both finally at peace." I knelt beside him, pulled the necklace from under my shirt. I'd worn it every day for 15 years. But now it was time to let it go. She gave me this in her last moments. Made me promise to hide it, to never tell, to survive. I kept that promise, Bianca. I survived. And because I did, Alessandro found the truth. Your death wasn't meaningless. It wasn't forgotten. I unclasped the necklace, placed it at the base of Bianca's headstone. The anchor pendant caught the fading sunlight, gleaming silver against dark granite. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for that final gift. I hope wherever you are, you know you made a difference." Alessandro pulled me against him, buried his face in my hair. We stayed like that for a long time, kneeling between 2 graves, mourning people we'd both lost in different ways. Finally, he pulled back enough to look at me. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because I needed you to see that I'm not running from your past anymore. I'm not scared of the girl who died, or the weight of what I witnessed. I've carried her with me for 15 years. If I'm with you, I'll keep carrying her, but I won't be alone in it anymore. Emma, I still can't promise you safety. I'm not asking for safety. I'm asking for honesty, for a real relationship where I know exactly who you are and what your life involves, where I maintain my own identity, my own life, but build something with you anyway." I took his hands. "I want to keep teaching. I want my own apartment as a refuge when everything gets too intense. I want clear boundaries and the ability to walk away if things become unbearable. But I also want you. Want whatever this is between us. You're asking for a partnership, not a fairy tale. Fairy tales are for people who don't understand that real life is complicated and messy and sometimes terrifying. I understand exactly what being with you means. And I'm choosing it anyway." I met his ice blue eyes. "Are you choosing me back?" He kissed me then, gentle and fierce all at once. When we finally broke apart, He rested his forehead against mine. I choose you. Every day. Every decision. For as long as you'll have me. But if it gets too dangerous, if you change your mind, if you need to leave, I won't stop you. Your safety matters more than my happiness. Deal. But you don't get to make decisions for me about what's too dangerous. I'm an adult who survived trauma before. I can make my own choices. Stubborn woman. You have no idea. We stayed at the cemetery until the sun finished setting, talking about logistics and boundaries and what a relationship between a mafia boss and a substitute art teacher could possibly look like. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be real. 6 months later, I stood in front of a classroom teaching 4th graders about color theory, while Alessandro handled business I deliberately didn't ask about. Most nights I went home to my apartment in Park Slope. Some nights I went to his penthouse in Manhattan. We'd found a rhythm that worked, a balance between his world and mine. And once a month, we visited Greenwood Cemetery together, brought flowers, told Bianca stories about our lives, thanked her for the promise that had brought us together. She'd asked me to survive 15 years ago. I'd done more than that. I'd lived, and I'd found someone who understood that surviving and living weren't always the same thing, but both were worth fighting for. The anchor necklace remained at her grave, returned to its rightful owner, but the promise remained with me, woven into everything I'd become. Some people are brought together by chance, others by tragedy. Alessandro and I were brought together by a 10-year-old girl's final wish, a 15-year-old secret, and the desperate human need to believe that even in darkness, justice and love could somehow survive.